you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is addressing an issue with our gun rights as far as our Second Amendment. Basically an act to amend our section 97-15-13 of the code to clarify the prohibition against hunting on any street, public roadway, highway, levee roads, railroads, the whole 9 yards. Our language in the past has been that interpreted that in a vehicle, you could not have a loaded gun in your vehicle. Well, by our own state statute, we cannot regulate the ability for a citizen to have a loaded gun for their own protection in their house or on their properties. That has been concurred by the last two U.S. Supreme Court rulings as far as the District of Columbia versus Heller and the New York Pistol Club against whatever that was, New York State. But my bill just cuts it down to the chase to where if you attempt to shoot in a public right of way across it, any fashion, Senator Barnett was talking about, that's covered in here as far as shooting across a public right of way where he was talking about an interstate. And if the property owner had a shooting house and the, objective would be flying across the highway, he's covered by that. I mean, under the way this is written. So basic explanation of it is that it allows you your constitutional right, even though it's hunting season, that you have the ability for self-protection, even though it's hunting season. With that, I'd entertain any questions.
So basically what I'm understanding from this is we're pretty much affirming that your Second Amendment rights also qualify to the vehicle, and that you have the right to possess and have the firearm in the vehicle, regardless of any time of the year. Right. But it is still illegal to fire the firearm,
attempt to,
from the vehicle, or attempt to fire the firearm from the vehicle, across the road, or off the right of way. That is still staying the same, correct?
Correct.
With that, we'll open the floor to any other questions. Senator McClendon, go to you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How would school districts be involved with this?
They're not in that exception. It's addressed in Heller. I'm not a dang attorney, but I did read of how there is exceptions already given in code for these specific areas. It's addressed through SCOTUS as far as one of them, just like your First Amendment, there are exceptions to it for safety reasons, as is with our Second Amendment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I'm wondering, is this firing a firearm from a vehicle, or is it firing across a public road? If one lives on a dead end, or if the road has been closed, how does that language apply?
Any aspect of the public right of way, it's illegal to, whether you're on it and shooting the projectile from, or attempting to shoot it, or if you're outside of the right of way and you're shooting across the right of way, that's illegal. Let me find it.
I think to answer your question, you're asking in the situation of there being a dead end road that has been closed by the county.
Right.
Would that fall under that statute?
Right.
The way that I understand that would fall under a private property if the county had relinquished that right back to the landowner. So I don't see that they would be in violation of this.
Okay, can we put language in there, Mr. Chairman, or something that kind of states that to clarify that, or would that be possible?
You're asking to put language in there just to clarify that,
Right.
that on private property, this is not a,
I'm hearing public roads, and if it's if it is, I guess I don't know how to state my
I think,
question.
I think your concern is taken care of because this is dealing with the public roads, basically stating that you cannot fire from the vehicle on the public
So
road.
this is from a vehicle.
Right,
This is the way, oh, okay, that's what I was asking.
Right,
From a
right.
vehicle.
yes,
I didn't
sir, from the
see that
vehicle.
part in there, from a vehicle, okay. All right, thank you.
The way I understand this, this is a reaffirmation of your Second Amendment rights, but also it's taken into account the fact of public safety as far as firing from the vehicle. Am I
Right.
close to what you're wanting to do, Senator?
Mhm. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Super?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, currently, it's not illegal to be in possession of a firearm in a motor vehicle, right?
Correct. Other than hunting season, deer season,
Well, it's still
or
not,
now with the
It's
U.S.
still not-
Forest Service.
it's still not unlawful to have a firearm in your vehicle during hunting season. You're talking about a loaded firearm in your vehicle. You talking about a loaded firearm or just a firearm in your vehicle?
Loaded firearm.
Okay, good. So I'm reading this as lawfully, on line 34, lawfully be in possession of a firearm in a vehicle. Well, I mean, that's not a violation now.
Yes, it is during hunting season.
Well, it just says firearm. I mean,
Well, I'm cutting it all, it's being cut all out to address it, just like what what we can address by our own constitution.
but my real
We
concern,
can't say nothing.
my real concern's on line 35 and 36. So you want it to be lawful to carry a loaded weapon, ingress and egress from a vehicle to the right of way. So you want to be able to carry a
Correct.
loaded gun down a public road.
If you pulled off a public road, as it is right now, everything has an interpretation kind of a little bit outside of its own, what it's intended for. We went from the point to where we're an open carry state. And in actuality, if you have a weapon, you can walk down a public roadway at any time,
You're talking about a pistol, open
No.
carry.
pistol or long gun. You can bring one, and it's been done where they have brought them with them when they went shopping, long gun or pistol. Law enforcement has had the respect for it, as long as the man or woman doesn't brandish the weapon, they're within their lawful right to do so. All I'm just trying to do here is that we're trying to enact a safety issue as far as hunting, to where nobody shoots from or across a public right of way, which is explained in the bill, but not infringing upon these people's Second Amendment right, the right to bear arms, and also for their own self-protection. There is two exceptions for this in there. On line 31, starts in line 30, the subsection shall not apply to the law enforcement officer while in the performance of his official duties or to any person engaged in a lawful action of self-defense or protection of his property or livestock.
Well, and I get that part, but my problem is just the ingress and egress from a vehicle. So you're saying you can ride around a loaded gun in your vehicle, you can get out, you can walk up and down the road, and you can walk to,
Good.
under this language.
It's basically the law now, if it's interpreted the right way.
Well, I mean, I just don't like the language. It just says, possession of a firearm in a motor vehicle. That currently, I don't think there's anything unlawful about that. I do have a problem with people walking up and down the road, especially a gravel road with a loaded gun. Because if you're walking up down the road with a loaded gun, you're gonna shoot up and down the road.
Well, your preemptive intent, it would be the same as if a man carries a gun in his vehicle and pulls up in front of the bank. Are you going to allow a police officer to conceive that he is robbing the bank? Not everybody, you have to assume that people are going to do the right thing.
Well, if somebody
This
walks
is-
in with a gun into a bank, I guarantee you they're gonna think that's what he's trying to do.
I think that where we're trying to get and where we are two different places right now. And I think that, I definitely don't want to speak for Senator Seymour, but what I think that he's trying to do, and the more I read it, the more I think we probably could use a little bit of cleanup language in this. Senator Seymour is basically wanting to say that it is not unlawful to possess a loaded gun in the vehicle at any time. And I think that any law-abiding, Second Amendment loving citizen would feel the same way. But it is unlawful to hunt from the road. It is unlawful to shoot from the road. Am I
Correct.
getting close to where you're wanting to be on that?
Correct.
Okay. So where I read that, on line 33, it should not be in violation of this section to lawfully to be in possession of a firearm. I think that should say of a loaded firearm, if that is what you're trying to do. Would that,
You can't define the gun. In other words, what the Supreme Court says with the New York pistol case is that I'm not able to defend myself with an unloaded weapon. And that's where they overruled the state of New York. Now, if I might, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read this to the committee. And we've all swore to uphold the Constitution of this state. And this is the current Section 12 of our Constitution. The right of every citizen to keep and bear arms in defense of his home, person, or property, or in the aid of civil power when thereto legally summoned, shall not be called in question. But the legislature may regulate or forbid carrying concealed weapons. Concealed weapons is the only thing that we can regulate. Now, from the safety, like we're trying to get in, I feel within compliance of the Constitution that we can regulate the safety issue of it as far as where you shoot and why you shoot. But as far as the ability of the citizen of this state being able to carry a gun loaded, we do not have the authority, whether it be on their person, in their house, or on their property. And the vehicle has been established as a precursor of your house.
Senator Silver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't have a problem carrying a firearm in a vehicle by any means. My problem is just, getting in and out of a vehicle, the ingress and egress up and down the right of way.
We can take that language out, but because it doesn't change anything. I was leaving that in there for a little bit of interpretation for some game wardens that would pull up and want to address your ability to get out of your vehicle and go into private property or
Because I-
national forest.
Cause on the other statute where, you're not to be, and I don't know the exact language, but the bill I think you're referencing or the law you're referencing about the,
This ain't law. This is
well, I know, but the current law we have where you can't ride around, during like the hunting season with, I can't remember the language, but I mean, you've talked about it numerous times about the current law.
harassment of wildlife. Is that what? Yeah.
I just have a problem, because you're gonna have people, and I have a serious problem with it in some areas, people just hunting from the road.
Well, we can increase if we feel that we're not making the safety issue at hand, we could increase the penalties. I mean, look,
Which, here, another thing that I think that Senator Seymour is trying to do with this, and, Senator Suber, to your point about the ingress and egress from the motor vehicle parked on the right of way, they could be parking on the right of way and having to access property on the other side of the road. That's a possibility, and that could be why he's trying to spell that out in that way too. But I see that we need some, that we probably have some more discussion to go with this.
can we put a repealer in and keep working on it, Mr. Chairman?
I would be happy with the reverse repealer if that's your motion.
That's my motion.
The motion is that we add a reverse repealer. All in favor? Oppose? That motion, the repealer motion carries. Senator Younger?
I'm kind of like Senator Suber, and we've talked about this before. You got a loaded rifle and you're on the public road, a rock road where there's nothing going on. It's loaded and Bubba sees a nice buck crossing the road. I think Bubba's gonna shoot at that deer. I believe the best way you can do it is to I don't have a problem with loaded guns in your vehicle. That's your vehicle. That's part of your house like you're talking about. I think that's good. But if you're on public road, I think the gun ought to be at least don't have it in the barrel at least.
Senator Younger, I, response to that, you own property, correct?
That's right.
Agricultural property,
Yes, sir.
public road,
Yep,
cattle on those public roads.
that's right.
You ever have coyotes in those pastures?
That's right.
Could Bubba be maybe shooting a coyote instead of a deer?
Chuck might, yeah.
You the Bubba then?
I'm breaking the law, but I haven't been caught yet. But I mean, I see what you're saying. But anyway, I just don't think that,
We have a reverse repealer and we have
That'll work.
time to discuss this.
Yeah.
Try to come up with some stuff. We've leveled out a bunch of concerns with this. But one thing we haven't talked to is the department, and they're in the back, and I would like to recognize them. If you would, please stand up. It's a little hard to hear you back there.
Lieutenant Colonel Scotty Jones with Department of Wildlife Fisheries Parks. And I know where Senator Seymour is coming from. Hunting from a public road is our #2 violation every year under no hunting license. The concern with it is, with a loaded firearm in the vehicle, when we come around, #1, it's a safety issue hunting from a public road. Now, when we come to check someone, if they're in the prima facie evidence of hunting, got a loaded gun, they're violating the law. And the reason for it is it's a safety issue. You look at it, a lot of complaints that we get every year is citizens coming around the curve and there's somebody standing in the road and deer's coming across the road and they got a firearm pointed down the road. That's a big concern for us, it's a safety issue. When you look at the language in there, it's gonna make it difficult for us as law enforcement to enforce, unless the language changed. Currently, the way I read the law that's proposed is that we're gonna have to see them actually shooting or attempting to shoot from a public road to be able to enforce that. The other concerns I got is when we pull around and there are several hunters hunting in the road, standing in the road with a loaded firearm, we can't do nothing about it at that point. Currently, we can enforce that. Usually the way we come up on road hunters is big group. You work at the first one you stop, by the time you get to the third one, it's unloaded. So you catch about 1 or 2 out of however many is in the group. So I would like y'all to just take that in consideration when you work on your repealer or whatever. Take that advice, what we see out there.
Mr. Chairman, speaking of safety, we have a lot of land that house bears and things of that nature. How do we combat that when we're walking down? We actually have to walk down, roads to get to our property, where we park and everything. And so how do we, be safe doing that as well?
What was the
We
first?
have bears and everything.
Bears?
Yes,
We
bears.
don't have any of those in North Mississippi, so
Yeah, we have them.
we got them.
They're
hauled in
plentiful.
Mississippi, so.
And they're no longer afraid of just gunfire, so, mama bear with cubs, how do we, so it's, like you say, I think it needs some consideration. Because I do want to be safe, I do want to abide by the rules, and I do want our constituents to do the same. But I do want to ensure that,
So basically, right now, as I see it, we have a bill before us with a reverse repealer that I think needs work, needs a lot of clarifying language. We have two options. We can table this bill, come back to it at another time after we have worked on it, or we can simply go with a reverse repealer and work in a floor amendment at the time. I mean, those are two options that you have. And as I stated earlier, it is the will of the committee. We are a working committee, so I trust you all to work and make that judgment call.
One of the things he was talking about as far as the, road hunting being the second biggest ticketing factor, some of them tickets are men and women sitting in their vehicle, eating their lunch, no gun in hand. Some tickets are at the dollar store where a hunter has pulled up him and his buddy to go into the store and get lunch. The automobile is separated from them with the guns inside, and they get tickets because they're loaded during hunting season. Now, I mean, we need to work on it obviously a little more or get some better explanation or clarification in the bill. But the main thing that I am very concerned about is our constitutional right and what them two Supreme Court decisions state in there and what our own Constitution states, that if we do not change this and rectify the wrong that has been there for many years now, I want to say it's almost been 40 years since the 70s when this all come into being, that we need to rectify it and get it right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna make a motion, table subject to call and let, myself and Senator Seymour talk and see if we can come up with some good language.
For motion, with that being said, those against have 5 minutes, those for have 5 minutes, starting with those for, correct? So if, briefly,
I'll just rest on my motion.
anyone want to speak against that motion? No one,